Okay. Well, uh, let me tell you to start with, I didn't do this all by myself. I was only able to put this together with the help of AI. But any of you who've tried using AI also know that AI can send you a lot of rubbish too. So it's been a very iterative program or work, and I've learned a lot out of it, and I hope it'll be useful for the future. The I think the the problem is if we dig deep into um, research papers or studies which have been done in various countries, not just in Africa, but uh, in Asia, one in the Philippines, another one in Nigeria recently. It shows that actually um, farmers, although they are interested in soil conservation, it's not necessarily the top priority for them. And as Jim mentioned earlier, they're much more interested in improving their incomes. And many of these farmers, where they have used vetiver, have actually prioritized its use for some other purpose, such as pest control. This was a case in Nigeria. And that got me thinking a bit more about how we should proceed and how we can get farmers interested in using the technology. And over the last few years, there's been some very interesting work done by farmer groups at interacting amongst themselves and sharing the information on how vetiver has improved their farming practices and their crops. And I've been particularly interested in the work which was done in Vietnam, where there are over 13, no, more than that, 16,000 farmers or members of a group, many of them farmers, who have really radicalized the use of vetiver and have used it in many different ways that we hadn't even considered in the past and have had good results. So this led me to, first of all, looking at what different sort of farm models you might use for vetiver. And I came up eventually with 7, which we'll discuss a bit later on. And then I realized that what farmers need more than anything else is to be able to demonstrate to their neighbors, in particular, um, what benefits they're getting. And in order to do that, they're going to have to measure the benefits or the changes in order to be able to show what this technology is up to. And one of the things we found was that there are 4 or 5 critical benefits that coming from vetiver, which we don't even see, or most of us never seen. I didn't see many of them. And we all attributed it to mainly soil and water conservation. Well, it appears that's not the case. So I will now move on into this slide presentation. So what's the challenge? We have results that are scattered all over the world. We're seeing um, yield increases from very high yield increases in some cases. We know that nematode suppression is taking place. Under some particular conditions, we're getting very effective cooling of the soil. So these exist, but they're scattered. The farmers can't compare results because there's been no real observations taken. we complain about government not supporting the program, and that's partly because there's a lack of coherent data. And if we could pull all this information together, there's a tremendous opportunity to move forward. Now, the solution, or one of the solutions, I think personally it's a pretty good one, is first of all, we need to, if we're going to share information, we at least need to try and standardize what we're sharing so that we're not comparing apples and oranges, okay? And I'm not showing it in this presentation, but there is a separate folder with a lot of files in on the protocols for these demonstrations. I'll get to that a bit later in a little more detail. And then we have what I call the farm model pack, which is also available, which combines guides and fact sheets for 7 different vetiver models. And we'll discuss those too a bit later on in this presentation. We need to have simple data collection, no special equipment for farmers. They can do it from counting. Everybody can count. And most people have phones nowadays, so they can take photographs. And it mustn't involve a lot of work either, because farmers don't want to spend too much time doing this. So we have to put together a system which is easy to work. We need to have probably country level networks which can help organize this a bit, but that is not 100% necessary. Let me tell you, right from the beginning, an individual farmer, even if he's not part of a group, can do this by himself and just share the information online or share it with a neighbor. It may be a community group, a church group, could be anything. And as long as there are people who want to work together and share information. So this whole program has got to be run on minimal administration and maximum farmer benefit. There'll be a global database which TVNI, Vetiver Network, will try and put together and be able to feed that information back to users quickly worldwide. So other people in different countries have a better idea what's going on. And lastly, we propose a 2-level approach. The first level is farmers, and that's the most important. They are going to show what is happening and how things are differentiated on their farms when they're using vetiver grass technology. And the other level is university research support, where I hope we can interest universities to select a few of these what I call demo farms and do more detailed analysis of what's going on. I could imagine there could be quite a lot of PhDs and masters theses coming out of this. Okay, so that's this is a solution, a coordinated, standardized, farmer-led demonstration worldwide. And let me tell you, right now we are getting interest from a number of people in all parts of the world. So the interest is there. Now, what this program is and is not measuring, and this is very important. We want to measure the impact gradient of a hedge. In other words, what does the effect of the hedge have across a field? How does it affect crop performance, soil health, pest burden, Striga change at various intervals, 5, 10, 15 meter, 20 meter intervals, depending on what the hedge is, the distances are. Another interesting factor is hedge age gradient. Younger hedges, vetiver hedges, perform differently to older hedges. Older hedges have a much higher association with AMF, vascular mycorrhiza fungi, and they are critical to what is happening underground when in regard to vetiver and the associated crops. And well, I mentioned here the biological buildup over time. What we're not measuring, and this is very, very important, is the farmer's agronomic skill or crop variety choice. They can do anything they like, anything. They can grow cowpeas, they can grow maize, they can mix crop. So that is important. Secondly, we don't care what fertilizer they use, if they use it at all, what the weeding frequency is, or what the planting date is. And we are not that interested in their management practices. What we are interested in, one of the most important things is that whatever management the farmer applies must be uniform across the entire plot. If he's doing it on 1/10 of his farm or an acre or a hectare, then he must use the same practice across that particular plot. In other words, if he's using a bit of fertilizer, he must use it right across the plot and not just on a couple of rows. If the near rows are treated differently, the hedge effect cannot be isolated. Okay? So what we're trying to do is to show what this impact of this hedgerow is having. And we'll come see more of that in a minute. We're going to have two-level data collection. Level one, as I mentioned earlier, is farmer-led. All sites will do this. And level two is the university support or research, which might select 10% of the sites or even less. I don't know. I've just mentioned 10 or 20. That's a lot, but that's in proportion of what the total is. What are we asking the farmers to do? We want visual pest counts, including Striga counts, because what we've discovered is that vetiver and the AMF, those vascular mycorrhiza fungi, which spread out across the fields in association with vetiver, will reduce Striga significantly. And that is very important in Africa, particularly. Then we want to have, the various ways of counting pests. We'll get back to that shortly. Then we have the harvest weight. And I've just here, you're not going to harvest the whole field, but in each line, row of crop, you might harvest, or every 5 meters, whatever it is, you might harvest 10 plants and measure them. Depending on the type of plant, we have to decide whether we measure by cup, or in Kenya we can use a Debbie, because a Debbie is a 4-gallon drum, which has been in Kenya forever. It was there when I was a child, which was 80 years ago. So it's been around. It's a common form of measurement. Then we have days to wilting is important. This in fact impacts it shows the impact of improved moisture, and we know that where vetiver is there, the plant in a very dry, droughty season takes longer before it wilts. Then on nematodes, which is critical to many plants, we can do this by checking roots. Farmers can dig up a root of a couple of plants and see if there's root galls on them. This is particularly for root knot nematode. Sediment hedge accumulation at the hedge, and just stick a stick in the ground and measure it. Take a photograph, soil temperature. We don't even need a thermometer. It'd be nice to have one, but they can do that by hand, feeling the temperature difference between and the impact of vetiver there. We think it might take about 6 to 8 hours a year. I think that's a bit low, actually, but anyway. Most farmers are in their field nearly every day, or a lot of them are, so they'll probably do it as they go along. On the level 2, university support, then we get into things like detailed soil analysis, precise nematode counts, moisture sensors, and all this sort of stuff. I won't go into it. If you haven't already got a copy of this presentation, I will make sure you all have a copy afterwards. As you know, we share everything in this vetiver family. Now, this is a diagram here, which if I can make it work. Come on. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble. Why doesn't that zoom? Oh, here you go. This is just a diagram to show the. This is below ground to show this gradient which we want to measure. This is the critical thing: is the gradient. Now here's the vetiver hedge, and here are rows. These are rows of crops here, but or at least these are the crop that you're going to measure at that row, at that distance, 5, 10, 15, 20 meters. And we're going to see, hopefully, and this is what we're seeing already, but it's not being measured, close to the hedge, there's very good nematode suppression. But here, 20 meters away, the suppression is not there, or it's reduced. And this is also compounded because not only does vetiver suppress nematodes, but also the AMF suppress nematodes. And how far does this AMF go out? If the AMF goes right out here and it's strong, we would expect to see nematode suppression right across the field. Anyway, that's just one example. And you measure it by counting the number of galls, nodes on the roots. Then another one is looking at what impact it's having on soil texture, whether it's crumbly, dark, medium, and so on. And you can look at this in more detail. Above ground, we have above ground. This is not. Here we are. We get soil nutrients. There's going to be probably more soil nutrients closer to the hedge than further away. The stem borer is another one we know which vetiver impacts significantly. Striga, days to wilt and grain yield. Anyway, this is you can look at that in more detail a bit later on. Now, the following 3 slides, which are not in the copy of the presentation that I emailed some of you earlier, is something I've just added. And they support the approach to this gradient monitoring. And I won't go into great detail now because I've prepared a document which I'll share to you, which is about vetiver's hidden benefits. And it's all about some work which was done by CIAT in Colombia with vetiver and cassava. And here we have a situation where we have vetiver hedges, and right across the field, this is cassava root yield is maintained right across. And we would expect, as these hedges go further apart, that we would expect actually to be a U-shaped dip like that. And interestingly, if there was a big U-shaped dip there, at this point, low in the dip, this is where you would plant more vetiver, either as another hedgerow, or you would put in what I call standalone plants on what we call a vetiver grid. But we can talk about that later. But that's just to give you, it's an important slide there. And this, incidentally, for those of you who also often say, well, we've got other plants we can grow instead of vetiver hedge. This was the impact of on cassava yield with elephant grass, Napier grass grown on either side. And look at the negative effect it had on this cassava. But again, this is a different gradient. This is a reverted U, and it's of interest. And by the way, an interesting thing here was that when they, no, that's not that study, this study here. And then there was another study showing how vetiver roots, cassava roots, which are in blue, were impacted by vetiver. And they did soil profiles, and they actually counted all the roots down to about 60 centimeters. And it's interesting, two things. One, vetiver was very well behaved. Its roots never went more than about 30 centimeters either side of the center line. The other interesting thing was that where cassava was growing close to vetiver, there was an increase of 17 meters of extra roots in that area. And that could not be, that has to be something more than just vetiver. And we think it's something to do with the AMF, the muscular mycorrhiza fungi. Anyway, you can look at the detail of this at your own time. I just included it for interest. Okay. Now, going back to these annual crop observation table, this is just an example of the of this gradient I keep talking about. This is what the farmers are going to measure. And in this case, it's maize, beans, and millet. And we're looking at distance from vetiver hedge. Okay, and these numbers are just total examples. It's just to give you an idea. Grain harvest, cups of shelled maize. Okay, why measure? Because we're looking for nematode suppression and the nutrient effect. Another one here is stemborer. Elimu Makona, who I was talking to recently, said, and he started this big program, he and Dabila Dinka and others started this big program in Ethiopia back in the 1990s at a place called Metu. And I visited that area. One of the things there, the maize always looked fantastic near the vetiver. And they all thought it was due to the soil moisture improvement, which probably was a bit. But then I said to Lima, I said, well, did you see any stem borer? He said, no, there was none. And he said, but the stem borer in the fields nearby where vetiver was not planted was very bad indeed. So here it was a hidden benefit. Nobody noticed the fact that stem borer had a very positive impact on grain production. So here was another. In this case, they're talking. We're asking the farmer to measure the number of stalks which are damaged by stem borer. Another one on general pest damage. Root gall. This is a nematode damage. None, few, many, heavy over here. Striga count, days to wilting, and soil quality. That's all we're asking. There may be more if you want, but I think these are just about the minimum, and it's not a hardship for the farmers. On perennial crops, same sort of thing. Fruit and berry count, fruit size, quality defects, pest damage, tree vigor, root health, and soil moisture. There we are. So that's that one. And then we have a field observation record, which they'd fill in, going back to that previous slide. Plant height, and then there's another section here on plant height, canopy, and this sort of stuff. Note, we want to know whether they use the microbial dip. Yes or no. I don't know if any of you have read what we've been writing about, but if you use this microbial dip at the time of planting vetiver, we get a much higher establishment rate, and it grows quicker. And that microbial dip has to include a vascular mycorrhizal fungi. It has to include that, and it can all be made on the farm. You don't have to buy anything. Okay. And then we have a farmer registration form, fairly simple. This is just an example. I'm sure you'll want to change it, do it differently. I don't need to go into that much. It's just name, location, what the key problems are, field trial, and is the farmer willing to receive visits or not? That's all. And we would like to have GPS data as well, if the farmer can get that off his smartphone. Okay. So that's what we're looking for. And now I'll remind some of you, if you haven't read it already, the models we're looking at. The standard contour vetiver hedgerow is what most of us know and we've seen in John Greenfield's little booklet, what I've posted often on our website. It's the standard contour hedge, a vetiver hedge, located at 2-meter vertical interval and with plants at about 10 to 15 centimeters planted close together in the line. And we call that Vetiver 101. Then we come to Vetiver 101E, which is the same as 101, but we include, in order to get full mycorrhizal coverage, we include where the hedges are far further apart than 6 or 8 meters, we put in a line of vetiver down the middle of the field between the hedges. And that line does not have to be a continuous hedge. It can be a standalone hedgerow, probably 3 to 4, each plant 3 to 4 meters apart. Then we have V48, which we often see on farms already. These are fairly closely spaced hedgerows. There's a lot, you use a lot of mulch, you get a lot of biomass for mulch, you get more cooling, you get better pest control, and it's particularly good for high-value crops such as vegetables and so on. Also, it's good for perennial crops, coffee, papaya, and so on. Then we have a rotational system. This is a system which will give maximum biomass, both below and above ground, and it's actually rotating vetiver on a quarter of the farm or quarter of the field at high density planting, and it goes for about 10 years, 3-year rotation with vetiver for 3 years at least, and a 12-year total rotation. The vetiver can be interplanted, but it completely rejuvenates the farm if the farmer is working on starting off with very poor soil. Then there's the food forest in Kenya, for example. Calabamolo has shown quite clearly what happens with the food forest. We get much better cooling, a big labor reduction, and income increases quite substantially. But the cost of putting it in is higher. And lastly, which is, I think, one of the best uh, uh, systems, is what we call the plantation grid. This is for existing farms where it's not possible to put hedgerows in. Maybe you can put them along farm roads or paths and things like that. But you just can't put a hedgerow through the middle of a field of coffee or bananas and things like that, unless they've already been planted well in rows and they've already been planted on the contour, which many are not. So you just go in and retrofit with vetiver at planting at a distance of about 3 to 4 meters on the square. And this can give very good results, we think. And we're starting to see this from individual farms. And it could be used at a state level, in other words, on large farms, as well as on small farms, smallholders, and it improves, particularly reduces pests, and it reduces nematodes, and it produces some mulch. But this is the critical thing is pest reduction and nematode reduction. Okay, and the last one is I picked this up in Kenya. The need, Peter Kingori and Nancy Wambui have been doing it, and so have Caleb Amolo and others, is the need for kitchen gardens for women. Women nearly always have to do the vegetables for families, and small kitchen gardens can benefit from using vetiver. And we have a kitchen garden model. And it's also be a great thing to introduce to schools for teaching kids about vetiver, what it can do, teaching kids about biology, soil, aspects of soil health, and so on. Okay. Okay, then we have minimum how often are we going to observe all this stuff? It's not too much. Maybe 3 or 4 visits a year. One at 3 to 4 weeks after planting, another at flowering and tasseling time, another at harvest. Okay, and the perennial crops, onset of the rains, mid-season, dry season, at least, and it has to be over at least 2 years. But for some of these demos, they may go on from. I mean, what we call the VCR demo mentioned earlier model. That's 12-year model. I mean, not many farmers will do that, but they may start, and if we can persuade them measuring for 12 years, that'd be fantastic. But that particular model, incidentally, the VCR one, is of great interest, I think, for drier parts, semi-arid areas in Kenya in particular, where there are serious fodder problems. And if vetiver is used properly for forage, it could be a good dry season forage. So how does this all work? It's simple. There are 8 steps from interest to global evidence. First, farmers have to review model fact sheets, select a model that fits their land and crops. They've got to find vetiver slips either from local nurseries or neighborhoods or their own plants if they've already got them. And let me tell you, we really encourage people who already have vetiver hedges to start measuring the impact of those hedges in the way I've been describing earlier, because those hedges are mature hedges, and they will have high populations of AMF fungi, and it's like wine. Good wine ages well, and it's the same with vetiver. Vetiver ages well, and it produces good results. It produces, for those of you who are maybe unsure, but a good solid line of vetiver produces a very high population of both roots, millions, and also AMF fungi. Okay, so then they establish the demo, then they share the fact that they've established it with their neighbors or with their group. Then they start sharing observations. They ask questions. Other people ask questions. At the end of the year, they submit their data, and hopefully they have a host a field day to show their neighbors and others what they've done. Because that's how things move along. I know from what I remember going to Metu in Ethiopia, some farmers there really did a good job with vetiver, and their neighbors were very interested. And that was how a lot of the expansion done in that area moved from farmer to farmer because they could see the results. Now, organization and support, well, this is always a bit tricky. We want to minimize it. The vetiver network will certainly not control it or anything like that. It's up to the country, it's up to the farmers, how you want to do it. It's up to your group. Some countries, you might not even want a country coordinator. You might just want to have a group leader down in a district or a county. It doesn't matter, so long as that information is pulled together and shared. That's what we're looking for. And that's been the success of the vetiver network over the last 20 years or so, is the sharing of information and getting information from other people, from those we shared it with. So here we have a number of county level organization, WhatsApp group, or community groups, Facebook groups. I mean, a lot of people are using these now. And what I find with this is that if you put up interesting information, good photographs with some text, people will read it and share it and want to use it. If you just put up a photograph or you don't put anything up, after a while, people don't even bother to come to your WhatsApp group at all. That's it, you're finished. No bureaucracy. Farmers choose their model and start with when they're ready. You don't tell them what to use. They may ask. If they ask, you tell them. If not, let them use what they want. There's no approval process, no mandatory reporting deadlines, no gatekeepers. Women and youth leadership, there's a real opportunity here for women and youth to get involved. I mean, you could even get high school boys or girls coming out on the farms and help the farmers do the counting. It would be a really good exercise for them. Or they could do something small at their own homes, or they can do something at the school itself, school programs. And then there's the university partnership, which we think is very important because the university is able to, researchers or scientists are able to get more detail, get more exact information. They can write the research papers. I don't want to write them. You guys write the research papers, and then you get the credit for it. And of course, the farmers get the credit for it too, because that's where you're getting the information from. The core principles: farmers own it. It's their demonstrations, their data, and their success. Coordinators facilitate, universities support, and TVNI gives a bit of global advice when you want it. Local benefit first. What you do at country level or district level or village level is most important. That's where it all starts, and if you can prove it down there, it'll go up the ladder. simple protocols, voluntary and self-paced. There's no mandatory schedules, no gatekeepers. Farmers start when they're ready, so on. Evidence that scales, that's what we're looking for. Stuff which will show that all these hidden benefits of vetiver can be scaled up and used by a lot of people. And it's open to all. New hedges, mature hedges, small farms, large plantations, women kitchens, gardens, school plots, all contribute equally with valid data. And let me remind you that the data that farmers produce, even though we think it is simple data, is actually very important data. And that's what's going to come out of this global program. This is data that virtually no research worker has produced in the last 30 or 40 years. It's unbelievable. They didn't do it. Well, I was part of that. I didn't do it either. But this time, we're going to, I hope, get farmers to do it. Now, to the next immediate actions. We want all the participants and people who haven't, and some others who have not joined this meeting, to review the protocol observations and the other stuff which I've shown today, plus a couple of packs which I will, with other files in which I'll share with you. Anyway, have a look at this stuff. In Ethiopia, Luma Makanan is going to go to a few places and test out some of these ideas on a few farms where vetiver has been grown for the last 30 years at least. And Limu's had a lot of experience with vetiver, not just in Metu, but in other parts of Ethiopia and in other parts of Africa. In India, I hope that PNS, who's the founder of the India Vetiver Foundation, or at least the CEO, and runs it, and they got a very good group in India. It's a bit wild at times, but and they're looking at a lot of different things that we're not looking at in this particular program. But I'm sure that there will be a lot of Indian farmers who will want to participate. And
Yep.
Let me tell you something. On the Vetiver network, on our website, we get, I don't know how many, we get thousands of people visiting our site every year, but 40% of those people are from India. And so one assumes that even if 5% of that 40% do something with it, we got a bit of an impact there. But I think, and in India, there is already in PNS is from Tamil Nadu. And let me tell you, I worked when I worked in the World Bank in India in the 1980s. My friends in Tamil Nadu were some of the best, and they really made a great effort at the Tamil Nadu Agricultural University, TANU, and I'm sure it's going to be the same again. And Tamil Nadu, of course, is the biological home, center of origin of Vetiver zizinoides. Then in Kenya, we've got a very good WhatsApp group in Kenya, as you know, and I know they're very keen to get involved with this, and so it'd be easy to identify at least 15 farmers in Kenya who want to do. I'm sure there'll be more. You've got to identify a coordinator or somebody to do this work, and then get started doing something there. And Jim and I will look at some of these forms again. When we get feedback from you, we'll circulate revised documents. And I'm sorry that I send you a lot of stuff, and I keep revising it, but each time I revise something, it's so interesting, I want to share it. So that's why you keep getting stuff from me. In fact, I'm going to send you another one today or tomorrow about the SEAT work, which I've done some more analysis on, and it's really, really interesting. And I think you should all read it. It's easy to read, and it's jolly interesting. Okay, this business about coordinator. Let me. It's important. I think it's important to have a country coordinator, particularly since once this information starts coming in, we need to get these aid agencies or institutions. They're not necessarily aid agencies. It could be NGOs, or government, or anybody. Get them interested, and we need to have somebody who can go in there and tweak their ears and say, "Look, we're doing something which nobody else is doing, and it's really got an impact, and you ought to be using it." For example, in Kenya, Farm Africa should be using this technology. It's just not soil conservation; it's improving the whole farm. Okay, so here we are. We need a volunteer. He should have a reasonable understanding of vetiver knowledge and the understanding of the vetiver system. As you know, I haven't even mentioned slope stabilization or phytoremedial work using vetiver, which is the other two legs of the vetiver system, because we're just focusing on agriculture. But these other legs are just as important because they all link together. I was recently looking at the new water supply for Chennai in India, and again, the source of all this water is coming off farms back in the upper watersheds, huge catchments area. And what's coming off these farms? A lot of fertilizer and stuff is getting into the water. It's getting into the drainage systems, pesticides, everything else, and it all ends up in a lake, and that's going to end up in the households in Chennai. So the best way of cleaning all this up is to start on the farms. And the other area Vetiver is very good at, as we know, is removing excess nitrates, phosphates, and herbicides and things on farms. So it's all linked. It's the coordinator is a part-time job, maybe 2 or 3 hours a week, but it doesn't have to visit everything. It works through other communities. It's maximum hands off, but giving a bit of support. And here's some of the things the coordinator has to do. But the coordinator does not need to be an existing vetiver leader. It needs to be the right person, someone new to the network who brings exactly the skills the program needs. Often we find people don't have time. They've got other jobs to do. So sometimes a good retiree is somebody you grab hold of to do that. In Ethiopia, Limu Makonnen is in his 60s now, and he's retired, and he's interested in getting back into this as a volunteer. Okay, this is about how to join up the program and how farmers hear about the program, WhatsApp groups, Facebook, word of mouth, NGOs, all sorts of ways of getting it to farmers, various ways to register. If necessary, if there's an individual farmer in the Pacific Island, in the middle of the Pacific, and he wants to join in, he's welcome to run a demo on his farm, and he can send the information direct to TVNI, the Vetiver Network. So it's some people don't like working in groups, but they like working by themselves. Okay, let's get that guy's information. Let's get him involved. And then we have the governance, TVNI role, country program role, autonomy. Country programs are not managed by TVNI. We don't want to manage them. We don't have the staff to do it. All this work, which Jim and I and others, it's all voluntary, and it can take up a lot of time at times. Certainly, it's taken up a lot of time for me in the last 6 months. There's some structures required. That's important as we want to make sure that we have these observation standards and so on. And finally, TVNI's role. So a simple, workable in-country structure protects the program's credibility with funders, with universities, and with the farmers themselves. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is it.